I'm going to call this meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. Could I have a motion, please, concerning the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Could I have a similar motion on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Bill, are there any customers to be heard or recognitions you want to give?
No.
Is there any old business?
No, sir.
I like that. Members of the City Council. Hello, Heidi.
Hello, I don't have anything to report, but I imagine we'll have some conversation later.
We could. Okay. And I'm assuming you'll take part in that conversation?
You would be assuming correct.
Thank you. I would expect no less. Members of the Public Service Commission, anything to report? I know that Mr. Bakke gave a report on the yellow ribbon.
I don't know if that's appropriate for here, but I certainly can.
Why don't you?
Last night for a city council meeting and this morning at the Clay County Commission, I gave our annual report of the Beyond Yellow Ribbon organization in Moorhead, which is a Minnesota-only organization that is set up to provide assistance, help, training, and so forth to our National Guard deployed individuals and their families. And over the last couple of years, because we haven't had very many deployments out of our area, we've done a lot more for our veterans in the community. And just to highlight a couple of them, each spring we hold a fundraiser for the honor flights, and in the fall we hold a fundraiser for the recreational fund for the residents at the hospital, VA hospital in Fargo. They get half the proceeds, and the other half goes to the Minnesota Veterans Home down in Fergus Falls. And we went down there in December, and we were going to present the check following their Christmas pageant. And the Christmas pageant that was done at the Veterans Home was all done by the residents. And you may remember when you were a kid, you might have done it in high school, in school or in a church or a place of worship and such, but here all the residents. The oldest player in the thing was 92 years old. The youngest was 1 month old, the grandson of one of the LPNs who played Jesus in the manger. And it was a very moving half-hour thing. Many of them were in with walkers. The three wise men came in with motorized wheelchairs and everything else. And oh yeah, we did present a check at the end, but that wasn't the story. So it's one of those feel-good things that we like to do.
Thank you, Les. And thank you for all that you do for the veterans as well. Mr. General Manager, I'm assuming you have a report?
Yeah, we have a few things on the report. I'll start with what's written in the report, and then I've got one other thing to add. The first item is every year we like to look at the legislative issues that are going to be presented in Washington, D.C. when we go to the American Public Power Association rally. And those include the Clean Power Plan. We're going to talk about grid security, and that's both cyber and physical security. Tax-exempt financing is it's a benefit that we enjoy because we're a municipality, and that's something that we continually need to protect, so we'll be talking about that. And then just other federal energy legislation that's impacting the utilities. Energy bills are in Congress right now being debated. The Clean Power Plan one is really interesting because in the last couple of weeks the Supreme Court stayed the advancement of the Clean Power Plan, and that has been an unprecedented, they're calling it, action by the Supreme Court, basically putting President Obama's Clean Power Plan and the EPA Clean Power Plan on hold. And I think it was shocking to all the utilities because they are basically making plans to comply with those EPA regulations. It just seems like they, from what I understand, the Supreme Court made an unprecedented move by staying that clean power plan. So it's going to be very interesting. And then now with one of the justices passing away and that issue being there, it could delay the clean power plan for, more than a year. So all the utilities are looking at what they're going to do. All the states that were required to come up with their plans. Some states are halting all their action, like North Dakota. Some states like Minnesota are saying, no, we're going to carry on. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in Washington right now, and so.
I would defer to the law professor on my right, but I'm assuming that there have been other unprecedented things done by the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but for some reason, this really stuck out as something that had never been done this actively before. Now, it's not going to, obviously, just state it, so they didn't get rid of it, so we still have to prepare for it at some point. But, at this point, at least, it looks like there's a little bit more time.
Yeah.
And I think it was 17 governors who actually, after
Initiated the action.
Well, no, they actually went out to say, no, we're going to pursue the clean power, including Dayton here in Minnesota.
Do we have anybody going to the APPA?
Well, Commissioner Anderson was going to. He's not. I'm going to go out there, and that'll be during our next commission meeting. So.
Yeah, I saw that. That's why I asked.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Travis is going to sit in this chair and lead the staff for that meeting. So. Commissioner Anderson, he's not here, but he recommended that we rotate that position with the division managers, so I thought that was a good idea. So it'll be Travis's turn first. So
He got the short straw?
Because Nancy's usually sit in this position before, so.
That means we got a couple weeks to prepare
Yeah.
Or leave town.
or leave town.
One of the reasons, and Commissioner Anderson was going to go out there, but he had some family issues that prevented him from doing so. But they specifically wanted Moorhead out there because of our Capture the Sun program. And I don't know if you recall, but there's, we sent a letter late last year talking about tax provisions, the energy tax, the 30% energy credit that our participants could take advantage of. However, we've advised them to talk to their accountant. But in Vermont, there was a very similar project to our project that got a private letter ruling from the IRS, and that private letter ruling said you can take the energy tax credit. American Public Power is grabbing onto that private letter ruling. They're very interested in what we're doing because we're, if not the first, one of the first that has a community solar project like this one. And, if that private letter ruling, which it doesn't, but it should, apply to everyone, then there would be no question that you could take the energy credit. We're still advising people to talk to their accountant, but if you're this entity in Vermont, you could take the credit. So it's an interesting position that we're in right there, and we'll be the lead in talking about that issue. So.
Okay.
Number 2, I don't have anything, but number 3, I wanted Water Division Manager Chris Knutson to talk a little bit about the SIMS project and really, in abbreviated fashion, go through the slides that he went through at the informational meeting. It'd be nice to have people at home be able to see this project that's going to affect downtown Moorhead. So as soon as they get that, there we go.
Chris Knutson, Water Division Manager. So I'll just give a brief presentation on SIMS. This presentation was actually given on February 16th, a little bit ago, at the MBA open house for the project. So city staff was available, MPS staff, myself, and then some MnDOT staff were all available for questions and just a general overview to the project. We were actually able to get about 30 or so people there at the project. About half those folks were business owners, so really, really good involvement from the community. Trying to get the word out on the project, and we were really happy with the attendance at the first meeting. Looks like we're ready to roll, maybe? Yeah. I'll give it a second here.
They'll keep you on there.
Okay.
They're having trouble with it.
All right. I'll just have to wing it, I guess.
People at home are not seeing that, so they're just seeing you.
Okay. But I don't have the. So. Yeah. No, I got it. So I'll just kind of, at the meeting, I just kind of gave an overview of kind of the who, what, why, where, and when of the project, just the basics. Who's completing the project? Celine will actually be completing the project. They'll hopefully be starting in May of this year. The completion date for the project is in September 12th, so a tight time frame to get a significant amount of work done. And really, the project entails significantly to MPS, a significant amount of about 4,000 feet of water main replacement, but also significant to the downtown area, quite a bit of signal work and then mill and overlay work. So there's sections of Main Avenue that are in pretty tough shape that'll be reconciled by this project. The cost of the project for MPS is about $2.5 million. One of the items for consideration at this meeting is approval of the GO bond for the project through the Drinking Water Revolving Fund. MPS was fortunate to get another Drinking Water Revolving Fund loan for the project, which will save, I believe, roughly about $250,000 in interest over the life of the loan. So a good loan for the project. Kind of the where of the project will be happening on Main Avenue and Center Avenue in downtown Moorhead. And why are we doing it? We've got some pretty old water main in those areas, about 50 to 70 years old. We've got some cast iron that we need to get rid of. And then there's some pretty significant upsizing that'll happen as a result of the project. There's some pretty undersized water main that we're going to get rid of. One of the significant things is after this project is completed, we'll, with the exception of Center Avenue between 4th and 8th Street, we'll be pretty much completed with water main replacement in the downtown area. So big accomplishment for Moorhead Public Service to get that amount of water main replacement done, and really to get the downtown area pretty much done. So there's 3 significant areas that we'll be looking at for water main replacement. They are in the, if you can follow along in the handout, but basically along 2 sections along Center Avenue, one from 8th to about 10th, and then one from 11th to 14th. Those 2 sections will be replacing water main. And then a really significant location of replacement is on 8th Street and Main Avenue. So that intersection of 8th Street and Main Avenue will be a little bit problematic, but hopefully we can do single lane on each side. We'll never hopefully have to stop traffic completely. The strategy for replacement on this project is horizontal directional drilling. So we'll actually be offsetting the water main from its existing location to 10 feet on either side, depending on the location. So we're not going to be ripping up the entire street per se. So we should be able to minimize some of the traffic disruptions because the street will never be completely ripped up, like you might think of a traditional water main replacement project. And then the presentation is actually in the packet. If you want to advance. Okay, sounds good. In terms of the one thing that didn't get into the packet that you guys have that I was going to present is MPS's communication plan. Because it's downtown and so many businesses are going to be affected, we'll be sending out a survey in the next couple weeks just to identify time periods that businesses can be shut down for water service. There's numerous restaurants in the area, significantly along Main Avenue, both Subway and the Dairy Queen will be affected. We'll want to make sure that we work with those businesses to make sure that we're not disrupting their business. We're also going to be doing door-to-door communication when the project starts to make sure that we'll be doing flyers, things like that, door-to-door, door hangers when we have to shut people off so that people have 24-hour notice. We've already started the public meetings for the project, so we had one. We'll likely be doing another public meeting before the project actually gets started. And then we'll actually be doing construction project meetings as the project progresses. So we're imagining probably weekly or bi-weekly construction project meetings where the MBA will be invited, and specific businesses, if they're likely to be impacted, will also be invited as well. And similar to Main Avenue, we also did quite a few press releases for the project. We'll continue to do those as well. I talked a little bit about the project overview, and then I just went through each one of the specific areas, which it's not really helpful for me to describe it if you can't see what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to kind of glance over that, take a look at the packet. It's pretty well described in the packet. One of the last slides is what will it look like. I just wanted to prepare some of the businesses for kind of some of the disruptions they will see. Because we're using horizontal directional drilling, we're also going to be using fusible pipe. The fusible pipe, they'll see long sections of pipe along whatever side of the road the water main is on. So there's going to be some efforts to be made to make sure that driveway access is open during those periods, and we'll be cognizant of making sure that businesses have driveway access the majority of the time, or at least very well aware that we may shut off access on the main or center avenues. And then they'll also see some temporary water running alongside businesses as well. So a little 2-inch blue or yellow piping, you'll see that up and down the sidewalk as the project progresses, so that businesses are provided temporary water. In terms of the water disruption for businesses, there will be periods of 2 to 4 hour stoppages. People will lose water service for about 2 to 4 hours. Like I said, we're going to use the survey results to try to identify when that's most convenient for the businesses, so that we coordinate those shutdowns appropriately. Yeah, that's pretty much kind of the update I gave to the MBA, and we're well aware that it's a significant project, and the communication portion of the project is a really serious component that we're going to put a lot of effort towards.
When do you anticipate commencement of work?
We talked to Celine about that quite a bit. They're anxious to get started. They'll be working on the DDI project this year as well, pending. I think MnDOT still has to award the project, but they're looking at getting started in early May, depending on weather conditions. They want to get started as early as they can.
And for the restaurants that are on Main Avenue or on Center Avenue, how long a period of time would they be down water-wise?
Probably
2 to 4 hours?
2 to 4 hours. And, we're well aware of the businesses, specifically on Center Avenue, because we had that hydrant hit a couple of years ago. So I've kind of already had some experience and already know how those folks kind of operate. We're just going to work with them for as best we can to do the shutdowns maybe at 5 in the morning, between 5 and 9. That'll mitigate most of the concern for like a mix office. And
One would hope.
yeah, and for like Taco John's, it'll disrupt their breakfast, but
Yeah.
we're going to work with them as best we can, and Celine seemed pretty amenable and agreeable to doing some of those scheduled shutdowns where we limit the amount of shutdown and really define the time periods of the acceptable shutdowns for those folks.
I mean, you could almost even go at overnight. I mean, very early or late when they're not open, right? I mean, that could be one way to do it.
Right.
I mean, I looked at the map, and we've talked about this project for years, and I didn't realize until I saw all the business names on the map
Yeah.
what it really means. So, I mean, the other thing is too, we need to make sure that our customers continue to go and visit those businesses. It's going to be a little bit messy, right?
Yep.
For about 2 months, 3 months in pieces. It's not going to be all ripped up at the same time, I assume, right?
No, each section, so there's 3 water main replacement sections. Each section will take 2 to 4 weeks depending on weather, things like that. So it's not all ripped up at once. There'll be some traffic control for each particular section. There'll be temporary water layouts for each particular section, so. But I anticipate each section probably a month apiece.
Does anybody else have any questions for Chris? Thank you, Chris.
Yep, thank you.
Anything further, Bill?
Well, just I had one item. Call came in today from Merlin Sawyer from Missouri River Energy Services. They are at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission working on our reimbursement from the Southwest Power Pool. So basically what they do is they take a look at all of our costs, and FERC is the one that rules on what the rate of return would be for the assets that we have that we're placing in the Southwest Power Pool. And then they reimburse based on costs that are incurred, and they make sure that all the appropriate costs are, just appropriate on what they will reimburse. And it was supposed to be somewhat of a routine conference and presentation, but Moorhead came up, and this is a topic that we talk about plenty here, and sometimes we don't like to talk about it, but FERC questioned the size of the transfer or the payment in lieu of taxes that Moorhead pays. And they're going to do a data request, and what MRES staff said is we should get that by the end of the week, and then we'll present them with some information. Basically, they do a cost of service study, and what they're looking for is what's an appropriate amount that they should reimburse for, because they're questioning the size of it. And I just want you to be aware of that, because that could make a significant, or could have a significant impact in the amount of reimbursement that we receive from the Southwest Power Pool. Again, it was a bit surprising to the MRES staff that it was brought up at this point, because it was supposedly supposed to be somewhat of a routine meeting. I mean, they were in DC and they met with FERC staff, but specifically Moorhead came up because of the size of the pilot, and so they're going to be looking at that closer. It could have, I mean, the Budget Committee has been aware of this whole process, but I just want you to be aware of that, because it might be something we need to keep an eye on.
But what is it, their business, how much we transfer to the city when it comes to the reimbursement?
Well, I mean, my understanding, and FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they, regulate, they look at, the appropriateness of all the reimbursements on the transmission system. So, I mean, what we're doing is putting 31 miles of transmission into SPP, and other interested entities can, you attorneys know this better than I do. They can complain about various costs that are placed in, or the rates of returns that each get. That was really the big issue with Missouri River, and the reason why they were at DC was they've calculated a higher rate of return than what typically is granted by FERC. So the main discussion was what rate of return should MRES and the 5 utilities that are being reimbursed from SPP, what rate of return should they get? So that was most of the discussion. This came up as an aside to that. So hopefully it's routine. Hopefully everything just kind of sails through, but just so you know, they're questioning that.
Dave has a question.
I'm going to want to have more conversation about this, but how do we stay on top of that? How do we stay more than aware that they're asking that question? How do we engage in that conversation so that it isn't just happening and we wait for the results? If they're talking to MRES about it, are they talking to us then every time that comes up, and are we going to have the opportunity to be involved in the response to those questions. You know, it seems to me that they're asking about something that is after the fact. You know, the charge to the customers comes after the expense of the power. And you know, so I'm not understanding at all how it is that their interest really can weigh very heavily. But I think in our partnership with our city folks and our friends over at City Hall, we need to stay on top of this beyond just waiting to hear what came next.
Right.
So your basic question is, how are we represented?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we're represented through, Missouri River Energy Services staff.
That's not good enough.
Well, no, I mean, they do an excellent job. I mean, Nancy and Travis and I are involved in the
Okay.
discussions all along the way.
Okay.
It basically is a cost of service study, which, I mean, we've got some expertise with, MRES has expertise with. They do our cost of service study. They've got accountants, we've got accountants, engineers that are looking at all these costs. They're presenting these to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission staff, Southwest Power Pool staff.
I just think we need to be very clear that, and this will surprise a couple of my friends at the city council, I'm sure, but that Dave Anderson is defending the transfer. Now that's weird. Because
Would you like the record to reflect that?
But what I'm really sensitive about is our relationship with City Hall on this, and interested outside parties getting into that
Mix.
after everything that we've done in the last couple of years to come around to a good relationship on that. We don't need that kind of outside influence starting to stir a pot. So I want you to know that I'm concerned about this, and as we move forward as a budget committee, Ralph, I think we need to just really be on top of it.
Well,
I
and
mean, these-
here's what concerns me. Isn't there a fairly standard rate that is applied to these transmission lines? I mean, why are we does every community go in there and argue a different rate of return when they're being reimbursed for the cost of what's transmitted?
Cost is cost.
Cost is cost. Well, except it comes as no great surprise that we have a transfer that's 5 times the national average. Okay, that having been said, but shouldn't they be reimbursing us at a fairly set rate that everybody else gets reimbursed? Somebody who's similarly situated with us, who has the 30 miles of transmission line or whatever we're talking about here, isn't there a set rate that gets plugged into that equation, regardless of where our costs lie?
Well, I mean, I'll get the answer to that question, but there's obviously they call them annual revenue requirements, which basically is your costs. And they reimburse based on your costs. And so we do FERC accounting. They can look through all of our costs, and one of those costs is a pilot. And they looked at the size of that and they said, is this appropriate? Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to step in and change the pilot. They won't do that. They
No,
can't
that's a
do that.
contractual relationship
Right.
between
But
us and the city.
They can say, we will only reimburse to a normal amount of a pilot. So they wouldn't reimburse the full costs for, that we're showing in our expenses.
Well, and a moment ago, you said that we were advocating, or MRES was advocating for a greater rate of reimbursement. How is that?
Well, I'll get back to you on that one, because that's the return on equity of the transmission. And how those two interplay, I mean, I can't articulate that right at this point.
That's the part of the puzzle.
Yep.
That's the greater rate? Well, and we just want to make sure that our case is advocated appropriately at that level. And I think that's exactly what Dave was saying, too. How do we know that? I mean, who else is MRES advocating on behalf of?
There's 4 other communities that have
And those
transmission
are?
like ours. Watertown, do you remember which ones? Watertown, Denison, Iowa. That's 3. Brookings, South Dakota. There's one other.
Is our situation unique as it relates to the other utilities that are included in that negotiating package?
Probably because of
We're the
size.
largest. I mean, and we are the one that's getting the,
Scrutiny?
no, we're getting the most, the most sizable return on our transmission
Would it,
of the 5
I
members.
think Ralph had a question.
Would it be a good idea, though, for Ralph, for you and I and Bill to get on the phone and talk with Tom, at least to start a group or a official conversation, so that we're in the loop, and so that we can ask the questions, and so that we've got, we don't want to get into your soup all that much, but I think at the policy level, this is really important.
Well, and the big thing here is that it's not a one-time thing, right? But whatever we do now is going to set new precedents for 30 years coming down the line. And we want to make sure that we get the highest return right now. So, because that's literally 30 years, right?
Yeah.
Of revenue that we may lose if we don't do it right now. And I still don't understand how how that can be an issue. It shouldn't make a difference at all what we have on the cost side, but again, that's just me thinking out loud here. I mean, cost of transmission is cost of transmission, and we built the line, and the fact that we have a transfer to the city should make no difference whatsoever. That's our business.
So the cost of transmission isn't necessarily being looked at from what you're telling us, but actually the cost of the individual utility is what is being looked at. And so if we have a higher than average transfer, which we do have, they are going to say that that is arbitrarily too high, and therefore that they should not base the return on that arbitrary figure.
Yeah, and that's not what I'm buying.
Well, but at the same time, the council has to be aware that that's an issue or is becoming an issue. And what was our projected level of income as a result of this per year?
It looked to be, I believe, about $250,000.
What were we talking to? Yeah.
$250,000.
But we
per
don't have
month.
any idea how much of a reduction we might be facing at this
Right.
stage. Okay. If the budget committee is willing to talk with Tom, I think it'd be a good idea.
Bill, would
we
you
will-
write this up a bit so that we've got a memo from the general manager?
Yep.
And then I'd like to have that conversation with Tom.
And I think we should make sure that Heidi and Chuck are kept in that particular loop as well in
Yep.
terms of our communications.
Yeah.
Again, but to be clear, it does not mean that we make a change to the transfer, right? It's just that the
No.
transfer has triggered this, so that nobody gets.
I don't think we have any intent
No.
of doing anything like that, but
That's not.
But
That's not
it does mean that our budgets may have to be adjusted in the future.
Right, I mean, yeah, a portion of that could be at risk based on whatever ruling the FERC makes. And typically, you're right, I mean, we don't go to FERC, we don't deal with FERC on a year-by-year basis. I mean, MRES does, and on a variety of issues, and they have a FERC attorney that is sitting right there with them during these conferences. So, I mean, and that person's been on MRES staff for a number of years. So it's at that level. It's not really at our level.
I mean, if FERC did make a decision that we didn't agree with, I mean, would MRES be willing to support us on a legal side, or is this something we would have to pay for ourselves?
Well, no, they've been, I mean, basically the 5 utilities got together and shared all the costs. And, I mean, unless we're singled out and we've got a separate appeal, at that point, I would guess that we would pay those costs. But as to the initial push for all 5, it's been a shared, and it's not even a pro rata share, it's just we've paid 1/5, even though we're the largest.
But I mean, to your point, if we get singled out, we have been singled out as of this morning, right? Because it was all about us, not about the other 4. So I think at this point, we can assume that they're looking at us, so I think we should be ready to fight that, because again, this is a long-term thing, and maybe well worth us fighting a decision we don't agree with, if it comes to that.
Yep.
particularly in view of the fact that they're arbitrarily changing the way in which they're doing business.
Yeah.
Or they're handling it the way they always handle business, and they just found this.
Okay.
It's not like it can be hidden.
No.
It's just there. They looked at it and said, is this appropriate? So,
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
Glad you brought that up.
yeah, I mean, it's, you need to be aware of it, because that's a large dollar item. I mean, we've been talking about this for a while, and this information just came up, and, yeah, I mean, I'll get some more information to you, and I think the Budget Committee definitely should be involved in some of those conversations, and we'll have a call probably by the week's end, and I'll make sure you guys are aware when that is, so you can participate.
Yep.
Anything further, Bill?
No.
Okay. Let's go to, yes, John?
Just a little bit of clarification here, Bill. You talked a little bit about cybersecurity.
Yep.
Have you recently looked at what our insurance covers for cybersecurity or hacking or any of that thing? Do we have coverage in place for an event like that?
Well, while Nancy's coming to the podium, I'll
Okay,
just
who's
talk.
responsible for dragging her to the podium?
We talked today about how we appreciate our IT staff in protecting us, because there's some hospitals and banks around the country that are being attacked and then ransomed, where they have to pay several tens
And
of
some law
thousands of dollars, to basically unlock their systems. And knock on wood, I mean, we've done okay in those cyber attacks. I mean, we haven't, knock on wood. But, yeah, to the insurance thing, I'm not sure we have insurance for that.
Nancy Lund, Admin and Finance Manager, and we were just talking about insurance today and coverages and things like that. I don't have the specifics on the cybersecurity in front of me, but I will put those together along with a review. Right now, we jointly have insurance with the City of Moorhead for both our property insurance and our general liability and workers' comp and everything, but I will put together a report on the cyber insurance out of that policy.
Please do.
Okay.
David?
What's our practice for reviewing firewalls and security with Kurt and contractors, or that's probably over your.
It's out of my
Hey,
realm,
great.
yeah.
But,
You
yeah.
need to have those conversations with Kurt McLean, IT
This is a guy
administrator.
that probably knows more about that than I do, but
He may.
it seems to me that we ought to also have a conversation about that.
Les?
Last time I had a conversation with Kurt about this, I believe that the majority of the network going from here to various locations within the city that are on our network are closed, that you can't get to it from the outside,
That's good.
which leaves those machines that have access to the outside are also susceptible to getting things from the outside. But Kurt should be able to give a reasonably good
Maybe in
report on that.
conjunction with your report on insurance, we can have a report from Kurt on those same issues.
The other thing that you should be prepared for is Kurt isn't going to tell you everything. And I will strongly back him on that. Okay, I'm just
We understand
forewarning
that, and especially on television.
you. Yes, especially on television.
but at the same
Or printed in
time-
our packet.
Whatever information he can provide to us safely, those assurances. Oh, yeah, even
Yes.
assurances, if not information.
Right.
Will do.
Okay?
Yeah.
John, did that answer your question for the time being?
We've done studies before, and, it's been a while since we've done vulnerability assessments. We did after 9/11 on the water side, which was required, and that's where we actually had closed meetings where we could actually talk about these things. And that may be something that you'd want to do in this case. I don't know if, we'd have to check laws on how we can close, but, that would be where you'd get a more full report, is if we could do it that way.
Okay. John?
Well, and just in addition, instead of just cybersecurity, there's provisions that we should look at, is if there was a hack, what kind of coverage would be in place to cover not just the lost information, but to cover each individual who has that information taken to protect their interests. So it's a significant area that's become an insurance industry, and there's a lot of different provisions within that area. So it's just more than one particular area.
Sure.
Okay, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, they're good questions.
Let's go down to item 8D, please, which is to accept a report on the service territory payments to Red River Valley Co-op Power Association for 2015. And I thought that this should come off consent because I don't know if everybody up here is fully familiar with the kind of payments that we make to Red River Valley Co-op on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is an annual report, annual letter. It's actually required by our settlement agreement with Red River Valley Cooperative Power Association. Basically, this includes all the land to the south, the annexations that occurred between 2001 and 2010. If you look at the table on like the third page back, many of the payments will expire in 2017. But then based on our negotiations with, on the Oakport, and whether we do that in an upfront payment or we pay it over a period of time, we'll continue to either make one big lump sum payment or annual payments such as this. We've talked about, well, I have a meeting with Lauren Borby of Red River Valley this week, and we will be talking about the upfront or the annual. And there's reasons why you'd want the annual, and then there's reasons why you may want to do it upfront. So that'll be something we talk about in the future when we get to the point where we're negotiating that final settlement agreement.
Anybody have any questions? Could I have a motion?
I move to accept item 8D.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Item 9 is to approve the specification and authorize the advertisement for bids for the 2016 extension and upgrade projects.
Yeah, I think, yeah, Travis is on his way up here. He can talk about this item.
Excuse me. Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager. Basically, what we're requesting from the commission tonight is to approve the specs for the extension of electric facilities up into the Oakport area for 2016. Basically, we have one project this year that we're going to be doing, which of course is Oakport. Engineer's estimate on the, and basically this, what we're asking you guys to approve is the boring costs to hire a contractor to bore some of the electric lines in the Oakport area. That estimated cost is about $570,000. That does not include any of the wire, transformers, or our crew time to complete all the other work. I will give you a updated project cost for 2016 at the next meeting when we award the bid for this work.
Okay.
Other than that, we are also not going to be doing any cable replacement in 2016 just due to the amount of work that we have up in Oakport. If we do have some minor cable replacement that does occur because of faults or something like that, we'll cover those costs under the annual boring contract, which we will be extending to our existing contractor for another year. We've worked with John Bolger to get an agreement taken care of for that.
Okay. Any questions? Could I have a motion, please, concerning this item?
Move approval of item 9.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, the same sign. That takes us down to item 10, which is to approve the bond purchase and project loan agreement with the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority for the Sims Water Main Replacement Project.
Nancy Lund. This is the offer that we have on the table from the Minnesota Public Facilities Authority to finance our water main replacement in collaboration with the City of Moorhead, their Sims project. And the interest rate they're offering us is a 1% interest rate over 20 years. So it's hard to refuse the offer. This is the second time we've gone through this process with the Minnesota PFA. So we use this financing vehicle also on the high service pump station. So it's a good program. It's for drinking water type projects only, so we get to use it on our water side, not available to our electric side. And we will use this vehicle again in the future with these kind of low interest rates. So this is the final step of this process for funding that project.
Okay. Questions?
A comment, actually. Chris, nice job on the public meeting. I was there for a while, and it was well attended, which was a bit of a surprise too. There were a lot of people there. But I just wanted to compliment you and the presentation of the project, and just the way we've gone about communicating with folks. And, you know, I heard from a property owner today, as a matter of fact, about the project, and he's excited about the level of communication he's had as a property owner as well. So just thumbs up.
Ralph?
So good job on the 1% as well. As you said, Nancy, we should look at other projects we can fund this way, because this is free money. And we have a lot of projects we need to do, so whether it's the water supply or whatever it is, so let's go for more. You can't beat that right here.
We will go back to this funding again.
Yep.
John?
Just a clarification, it references 1%, but it doesn't reference if it's a fixed or variable. I'm assuming it's fixed?
It's fixed, yep, 20 years fixed, yes.
As a matter of fact, I received a copy of a letter today that I gave to Casey from that group, and if anybody'd like to see it, they can certainly do so. It shows the savings that are generated because of the financing. I didn't receive it until right before the meeting, but
It says $253,000, right?
Correct,
Savings.
over the 20-year life, yep.
And then just for clarification here, as far as, and I'll have to maybe refer to the attorneys here, but we are funding it through a note, but in the documentation, it's referring to bond financing.
Right.
So do we need to make that clarification as far as in these documents as how we are going to be funded?
What the state actually does is they sell bonds to support this revolving loan fund, and then they borrow us the money. So on our financials and on our books, it looks like a loan. So we're not actually going out and selling bonds
Right.
like we do for our traditional funding. So it is actually a loan and will be recorded like that.
But when you look into the loan agreement, though, it refers that we are going to have to specifically do things as if it were a bond, like section 1.6 and 4.1, I think, of the agreement, it refers to that. So I don't know if that's a material item or just if it's a normal terminology within the working through the state.
It would be, it's the state's normal terminology. I don't think there are any additional restrictions on anything other than what we're already doing for our regular bond issues. So we still got to keep our reserves in place and things like that.
But I guess I was specifically looking at the prepayment, and it said specifically that we would have to hire an attorney to determine if there was any history or issues regarding bond versus notes. And there was a couple other items in there that referred to bonds, and I'm looking at page 2 and 3 of the 11-page document here for you. So again, it's just raised the question if that is something that we need to get clarification on, or it may be, like you said earlier, just the state referring to, because the way I read it, I can understand that it refers to the state as far as their acquiring the financing, but then it says that we may be required to do things related to the bond information. So
Okay.
just clarification.
I will double check that, but yeah, I don't think there's any other requirements outside of what we do for our normal bond issues on this.
any further questions or observations? Could I have a motion, please?
I move to approve item 10.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. We'll be going into closed session shortly. The meeting will be closed for executive session as permitted by Minnesota Statutes 13D05, Subdivision 3C, to consider offers for the purchase or acquisition of property along 32nd Avenue South in West Fargo for the relocation of a 115 kV transmission line. Also as permitted by MSA Section 13D05, Subdivision 3C, to discuss the acquisition of property at 519 Elm Street South in Moorhead and other parcels of real property. And thirdly, as permitted by MSA Section 13D05, Subdivision 3A, to evaluate the performance of the general manager. Will there be any action taken as a result of this? No action will be taken tonight? Okay, could I have a motion, please, to go into closed session? Mr. Baki?
I move we go into closed session and adjourn the meeting from that closed session.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are now in closed session. Thank you.